Are we live? We are trying to get live here. Hello. All right. I think we made it. We're live here. Thank you everyone for joining in. I want to welcome you to the first Master the Milky Way online training via YouTube. And really, this is the first week of Master the Milky Way. My name is Mike Oitzman. I'm going to be your instructor tonight and leader for the field work that's planned for the next couple of weeks. But more than anything, I want to invite you to use the chat window to communicate with me if you have questions. So I'll be able to follow the online chat. So please enter your questions there. I'll just say hello to you guys so that you've got that message in the chat, and you can use that to communicate with me. So what we're going to do tonight, we've got two free online training classes scheduled for tonight, and the second one on Wednesday night, and then that's followed by two scheduled in-field field trips. The first one on May 23rd, and the second one scheduled for May 30th. So hopefully you'll be able to make one of those where you can practice what you're going to learn tonight. After that, we've got a bunch of other adventures that we're planning to do later on in the year, and I'll give you some teasers for that at the end of the presentation. Now, as we get going, I want you to know that you don't need any experience to make this happen for you to learn how to photograph the night sky. That's why we're here, to learn what it's going to take. And you don't need any fancy gear either. A basic camera, as we'll learn, is all needed. In fact, some of the modern, the latest models of the smartphones actually do a pretty good job of imaging the Milky Way as well. But this all does take some preparation. And so that's really what we're going to talk about tonight. And so with that, I want to get started with our presentation and introduce you to this so that you can learn how to get your first shot. So what you're going to learn over the course of the next couple evenings is how to plan. That's what we're going to talk about tonight. How to photograph the night sky, and then how to process it. Your images. We'll save that for a future to be scheduled session. There are dozens and dozens of online videos as well that help you through the processing depending on the artist that you would like to follow. But anyhow, let's talk about some of the challenges of night photography. The first one is what we're going to talk about tonight, which is preparation. And the key here is that let's see what is that you know, you need to make sure that you're going out to actually capture a night and a scene where the Milky Way is going to be there. So I'm going to present you some of the tools tonight that will help you understand how to do some homework before you go into the field, so that your time in the field is well spent and you're not sad that you went out on a night when the full moon is out, for example, and you're not going to be able to see the night sky. We're also going to talk about the correct exposure. You're going to learn some things about how to set your camera up. This does require going into manual mode to be able to set the exposure correctly. We're going to talk about all those things on Wednesday. It's also about getting to know your gear. So some of the things that will be important about knowing your gear is being able to know where the buttons are, how to find things in the dark, and that'll be important as well. And that's important to practice as well. You can practice some of these things maybe in a dark closet or in the middle of the night in a dark room before you actually get out into the evening sky. And lastly, we'll talk about safety, and that's also important when we're out walking around in the dark. Okay, so with that, let's talk about what we're going to learn tonight. We're going to learn about the gear. We're going to learn about picking the right location, and we're going to learn about picking the right time and date to actually go out and photograph the night sky. First of all, I want to talk about safety, and that'll be important, especially on the field trips, but it's also if you're going out on your own. I always love this quote from Game of Thrones where it says, "For the night is dark and full of terrors." And if you have an active imagination, it can certainly be a little bit scary. That's why it's more fun to go out in a group, and why I'm putting this all together to present the opportunity for you to go out with others to feel safe in a group. Another thing to understand is that you're out there in the middle of the night with thousands of dollars of gear potentially on you. That can make you a target to be your gear stolen. You don't want that, but you want to understand the risk that you're taking there. Also of importance is unfamiliar terrain. So a lot of these amazing images that you see online that you might want to go out and take are going to be on trails, out on edges of cliffs where you've got an amazing scene in front of you. So being able to pre-scout the location during daytime is a very important rule and very important to making this a successful adventure for you. And then we've just got the other things to be aware of at night. Of course, you've got spider webs. I've walked into my share of spider webs at night. That's always a little freaky. Barbed wire when you're walking through a field. Cow patties. Certainly, I've jumped my share of cow patties. But also, you've got holes, pits, rocks, streams, and of course, I talked about cliffs to be worried about. And then, of course, there's animals. So no untold things that could also threaten you. Dogs. I've been chased by dogs before. Never ran into a snake, but they're certainly out there. But then you've got skunks and bears. And for that, it's important to know that I always carry bear spray with me when I'm out in the evening. And bear spray works great for many of these animals like bears and mountain lions, those type of things. But it also can help be a protection if someone wants to threaten you to take your gear. All right, so let's with that in mind, let's talk about planning the shot, because this is going to be the bulk of what we're going to cover tonight. And when we talk about planning the shot, the key here is that you need to plan for both the night sky, and that is knowing where the Milky Way is going to be, and you also need to plan for your foreground. So, being able to have a good foreground and being able to plan how you might want to light that foreground. You got two examples here, both taken at Mono Lake. The one on the left was taken without lighting the foreground, and you can see while I got a decent image of the Milky Way, exposed properly for the Milky Way, it wasn't exposed to light the tufa. So there are a variety of ways that you can light the foreground image, and we'll talk about some of those tonight. One of them is breaking out a flashlight and light painting the scene. That's what's done on the right-hand side here. But you could also take an image during blue hour and then composite your image. I'll show you an example of that. And also, you could also have the moonlight up and image your foreground and then wait for the moonlight for the moon to set. And then take the image without moving your camera, of course. So lots of strategies for getting a decent image of the night sky. And so these are the kind of things I want you to consider as you plan the shot that you see in your mind's eye. Okay, so I talked briefly just a second ago about composite images, and I put this chart together to help explain sort of the difficulty of night imaging. So on the left-hand side, we've got the easiest type of imaging, which is a single exposure, and this will be our goal for the first workshops that we do this season. The next two weekends, I will teach you how to get a decent single exposure image of the Milky Way, because that's the easiest. And from there it gets more difficult. So a composite image is where you expose for the sky and then you expose for the foreground, and then you learn how to mask and how to put those images together in a tool like Photoshop, and without moving your camera off of its tripod, of course. And so, exposing the foreground could be as simple as exposing it for a long time, like 30 seconds or a minute, for example. But that won't work for the night sky, as we'll learn, because if you expose the night sky on a stationary camera for a minute, you're going to get stars that blur, and we'll come back and talk about that in a bit. So take some strategies to that. And then it gets more difficult when you move to things like stacked images. And this is the idea of taking multiple images a few seconds apart and then stacking them in some external software. This is an advanced topic. I'll run some workshops later in the season for us to attempt to do some stacked images. And then the most advanced is what's known as a tracked image, which is where you put your camera on a sky tracker, which actually moves with the stars, and this lets you take super long images. You can, with your camera on a sky tracker, you can have a 1 minute or 2 minute long exposure with perfectly pin sharp stars, and that's the most advanced. But then, of course, the ground is moving, so you have to have some strategy to mask and composite. So there actually is the idea that you can do several of these stacked and tracked and composite to get many of those amazing images that some of your favorite online artists have. Also, as you move along from left to right, the noisiest images will be found in a single exposure image, whereas a tracked image helps get rid of noise and helps bring the noise down. Same thing with a stacked image. It helps reduce the noise as you stack those multiple exposures. And this is where you get to see those really rich, beautiful, detailed images of the Milky Way. All right. So as we learn how to image the Milky Way, of course, what we're trying to accomplish is that we want, number one, to have sharp stars in our scene. And we want no star smear. We don't want the stars smearing. We want proper contrast, and we want to control the noise as much as possible. But one of the things you're going to have to let go of here as we learn how to do this is if you've photographed during the day and you're used to trying to go with an ISO of 100 to try and get the least amount of noise, the best image, you can't get the night sky with an ISO of 100. You're going to have to learn how to push the ISO up to the range 640, 1600, 3200, even 6400 on some of these modern cameras. Still take great images and control the noise, and there's actually ways that we can process some of that noise even in a single exposure with some tools like Topaz denoise. So again, I want to expose you to all of those things, but it's going to start with the foundations of getting a good image to begin with. So before we get into that, just a quick bit of history here, history or background knowledge. So when we talk about what's the Milky Way, the Milky Way really is the galaxy that we live in, our star system, the moon and the stars, moon and all the planets and all their moons. And the sun all exist in the Milky Way galaxy. We exist out in a corner of the Milky Way, one of the arms. And really, when you look at the Milky Way on edge, you see this array of dust and light and light and dark and all the stars and all the nebulas and all that stuff. That's how we see when we look towards the center of the Milky Way or the core of the Milky Way. That's what we're actually imaging. We're looking at the Milky Way on edge, looking back towards the center of it, looking through all of the other stars and dust and all the amazing things that are in the Milky Way. That's what we're trying to get an image of, right? So this is our galactic neighborhood. And again, in this image, which is a highly dense image, I took one of the highest resolution images that I've taken of the core of the Milky Way. You can see there's just thousands and thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of stars, in the galaxy here. Right, and so this is as well as the dust lanes, and again, you want to try to get the resolution to bring this out in your images, right? And so when we talk about the Milky Way core, that's a term that we'll use. The core is that center of the Milky Way. It's where the black hole exists at the center of the Milky Way, so they believe, and all those stars are circulating in the Milky Way around that Sagittarius dark black hole. And so what we like to do is, that's the most interesting part of the Milky Way. It's not the only part of the Milky Way. The Milky Way goes all the way across the sky in a band that crosses the sky. But when we talk about the core, and we talk about the core season, we're talking about trying to image that core part of the Milky Way and get that somewhere involved with the image that we're trying to create. But it's also possible on any night to get the other side of the Milky Way. It's a little less interesting, but it's still interesting. So there's always possibilities for you to find the, part of the Milky Way in the night sky. All right, and this is what we call an arch of the Milky Way. So we've got the core and the arch, and we'll see in the next scene here in just a second that there are different parts of the season where the Milky Way is different for us, and we have to plan for that as well. The other part of the going out to photograph the Milky Way is whether you want the moon or no moon. And I can tell you that here's the same scene. I didn't move my camera. I just happened to photograph it, the Milky Way with no moon, and then after the moonrise, and you can sort of see the sky changes color because the moon lights up the sky, makes it a little bit more bluer, and it also begins to occlude or wash out the Milky Way. Now, this is very important if you want to get that dense, high-quality image to try an image when there's no moon in the sky. Now, the light that you see on the lower right-hand side here, both of these images, that's something called light pollution. That's not the moon. That's light pollution, and that's another consideration that we're going to have to think about. And I'll teach you more about this evening about how to consider, whether light pollution is going to be in your scene or not, depending on where you go out to photograph. All right, let's talk briefly about gear, because I teased you about this earlier in the session. And there's a couple of things that are recommended here. The minimum that you need is a camera and a decent lens. And by decent, I mean it could actually be just your kit lens is good enough to get started, and you might want to upgrade that lens over time. But your kit lens, if a zoom lens, that's all possible. Doesn't matter what the f-stop is on it to begin with. But as you grow in your skill set here, you may want to buy a lens that's faster, that has a lower f-stop to let in more light, because that just means you can gather more light in the night sky. But you need a camera, you need a lens, and you need a tripod. Those are the three basics that you have to have. We need the tripod to hold the camera steady while it's imaging the night sky. Okay. The rest of these are, nice to haves, although I would say you want a flashlight or a headlamp with a red LED on it. Those would be very nice to have. Some extra batteries for your headlamp, also always good to tuck into your backpack. Many times I've run out of batteries and had to refill my headlamp with extra batteries. Also, a nice extra have is what's known as an intervalvometer or a remote trigger, and these can be wired or wireless, but they will be very specific to your camera model. I can help you, with some ideas of how to select that, and then just, of course, extra batteries for your camera are also important to have, and maybe even extra storage card if you take a lot of images. Okay. So, almost any modern digital camera, DSLR or mirrorless will work as long as it has a manual mode, and that allows you to control the shutter speed, the ISO, and the aperture setting potentially, depending on the lens. So you need to control those three things to be able to get the best image. It might require a tripod, or it should have a tripod mount on it, so you can mount it on a tripod, and it should have a delay timer if you're not going to use a remote trigger. So the other way that you can get good images is to turn on your delay timer. We'll talk about this on Wednesday night, and like a 5 to 10 second delay after you press the shutter, so that the camera stops moving before it opens the shutter. Another nice thing is that you should put your camera mode to capture raw images as opposed to JPEGs, and this will be important because if you just capture JPEGs, for example, they will be compressed and you'll lose data or information, so you won't be able to process them as deeply as you can a raw image. So if you've never taken raw images, we'll talk about that again on Wednesday, but you might want to, between now and then, figure out if your camera can take raw images, and if so, how to set that up on your camera. Okay. I do say that high ISO is not required to capture great Milky Way images. There are some ways around that, but it does help. This is an old note. I guess I should change this from an earlier presentation. Cell phone cameras, the latest models now, do work pretty well. So the iPhone 16, the latest Galaxy cameras, they're getting pretty awesome for doing some night photography. Lastly, as I said, your kit lens is fine for your first Milky Way session. But one thing to note is you don't need to use autofocus or stabilization for night photography, since it's going to be on a tripod, and because we're going to set the focus and then not touch it. Actually having a fast and sharp manual focus lens is fine for night photography. Here's an example. You can find these on Amazon or on B&H, for example. These manual lenses, like these ones from Rokinon, for example, $349 for a manual lens. And that might sound expensive to you, but of course lenses get way expensive as you go up the price curve. But this is a good entry-level example for between $250 to $400 for a manual sharp lens with a low f equivalent here. This aperture range is 2.8, for example. All right, so that's something to think about once you determine whether you really enjoy what you're going to learn here. All right. Now, the other thing about lens choice is you don't have to have a particularly wide lens, right? So if all you have is a 50 millimeter lens, for example, that's not bad. I mean, it's nice to have a 24 or a 16 or a 14 millimeter lens, but a 50 millimeter can work fine because you can, for example, take a panorama panel and then stitch them in post, and that's exactly what I did in this image. To get such high resolution of the images, you can, for example, do a 3x3 or a 4x3 or 4x4 with a 50 millimeter lens, and then stitch it, and then you've got this massive file with amazing quality. You can see nebula in this. You can see how rich the dust lanes are. So that's actually another technique to image the night sky, is to actually stop down and then use the resolution of your sensor with a smaller focal length lens and do a panorama panel. But again, that's something for the future. All right. We talked about a headlamp. I say must have here. We're going to talk about the concept of red LEDs. So the idea behind red LEDs is that they protect your night vision. But I'm sort of changing my tune on the red LEDs versus white light for headlamps, because when we're in a group and when someone has on their red lamp, if you expose the foreground with the red light on, it's very difficult to get that red hue out of your foreground. So much better to have some light leaking out of a white light rather than a red lamp, especially when we're in a group adventure. And we'll talk about that more on Wednesday night. But again, you can buy a decent headlamp for 20 to $40 on a variety of places. Okay. So let's talk about planning your first shot. So in the second part of the evening here, we're going to talk about each one of these things, because these are all the things we have to consider as we plan our first shot or any nighttime adventure. And let's sort of put these in order of importance. Okay, and number one on the order of importance is weather. Because clouds aren't any fun out in the night sky. In fact, this is the one thing that would cancel any of our future trips or postpone one of our future field adventures, would be weather. So I'm a weather hound. I always watch the weather. I'm going to show you an app tonight that's free, a website that's free, that gives you an excellent view forward on all the clouds predicted. It's what I use to plan, in the days leading up to the workshop as to whether we're going to go or not. But weather is the number one thing. Then the number two thing to consider is the moon phase. Is the moon up? Is the moon in a full moon? Is it new moon? I'll show you some tools you can use to predict that. Then also, when does the moon rise and when does the moon set? So knowing those things are very important to planning what time of the night you're going to go out. The third thing, also important and can also ruin your scene, as I showed you in the prior image a few slides ago, is light pollution. So as you might already consider, trying to take images in downtown Sacramento isn't going to yield you much. Even in downtown Grass Valley or some of the urban sites, you still too much light pollution to take a good image. So you really need to go somewhere outside of town. But also you need to consider which direction you're shooting. If you're shooting back towards a city, some of that light pollution is going to be on the horizon. It's going to leak into your scene. Okay, so we'll talk about that. I've got an excellent website to share with you tonight that will help you figure that out. Fourth is when the Milky Way core rises. So I introduced you to the concept of the Milky Way core. You want to know when the core is going to be above the horizon, because again, it may not be interesting to shoot before that, or it may not be interesting to shoot after the core sets. So definitely, just like the moon rises and sets, the Milky Way core rises and sets. And then finally, the last couple things to consider is what's going to be your foreground. Is it a tree? Is it a human? Is it a barn? Is it some arch in Canyons Park? What are you putting in the foreground? And what's your focal point? That's important to make the scene interesting. And then lastly, what's the phase of the Milky Way? So the phase of the Milky Way, you're going to understand here as I demonstrate for you how the Milky Way moves through the night sky. There are also some apps that can help you plan. My favorite is an app called PhotoPills. It's on iOS and Android. Costs about $10. I think it's probably the best $10 that you could spend on your Milky Way future. There's a competitive tool which some people swear by as well. I've also used it a bit. It's called Planet Live. So Planet, P-L-A-N-I-T, are two of the best tools out there. They have very similar features, slightly different user interface. I'm familiar with PhotoPills, so that's what I'm going to show you. Then there's an online app called Stellarium Web, which I'll demonstrate in a few minutes. It also has a phone app, a smartphone app as well that you can download. And then there's another app that's nice called Ephemeris, which has the moon and sun features, not as featured as PhotoPills and Planet Live, but it also does have some good features to that as well. All right, so let's get into it. How do you figure out the phases of the moon? And, you could just go online and do a Google search for phases of the moon. That's all will always tell you. And I show you that down here the scenes with and without the moonlight. But in PhotoPills, we're taking a screen from PhotoPills. It has a calendar. You can go to any date in the past or future, and it shows you the moon phases. So here you can see where the moon is going to be dark and where the moon is going to be full, and it shows you that for every month. And you can sort of begin to understand the cycle to this, and that the full moon happens every 28 days. And so it sort of progresses through the calendar, year to year. It's never going to be full on the same night, the same calendar date in the future. It will progress and change. All right. And the ideal time to shoot is around the new moon. And I plan most all of my adventures for the year here with Master of the Milky Way around the new moon. And we pretty much have, about 10 days plus or minus around that new moon where we can get some decent time in the night sky. Might only be an hour or two, but there will be some dark sky nights, part of the night, where you can image the Milky Way, right? But you want to avoid the full moon for your Milky Way exposures. If you still want to go out and shoot, go shoot the full moon. Find a scene and shoot the full moon around that calendar date where the moon is full. So you just have to change what you're going out to shoot. And you won't get the Milky Way, just to know, right? And that's, again, it's a blow up of the scene from PhotoPills. Now, also from PhotoPills, if you look at the moon, this is the kind of information for a specific date. So if you're planning to go out, you can pick a specific date. And for example, it tells you when the moon is going to set, tells you when the Milky Way core is going to rise. So here's a good example. The moon sets at 4:22 in the afternoon, then sunset is at 8 p.m. But the Milky Way core doesn't rise till 11:30. So even if you got out there at sunset, you're not going to see much of the Milky Way until 11:30. So you might as well either sleep in, take a nap, enjoy your dinner, and then head out until at 11:30. And again, this is how we've planned these first couple of ventures to get you out there into the field just as the Milky Way is rising, which is why we'll be out there around the 10 p.m. Time frame the next couple Friday nights, right? Then again, if you fast forward, to the next morning, so here's an example from Friday, May 7th to Friday, May 8th. You just click forward and it tells you when the Milky Way core sets. Here it's at 4:13 a.m. and then it tells you that the moon rises again at 4:48. Okay, so that sort of helps you plan this, and then the sunrise will begin to happen will happen at 5:58. So obviously you won't be able to see the Milky Way there. And this is the kind of information that you can get out of an application like PhotoPills. All right. And with this, you can deduce that you get 5 hours of Milky Way shooting time with no moon on this evening from Friday, May 7th to Friday, May 8th, back on 2021. But the moon would rise, moon could rise. What did I say? The moon could rise after the core set if you want to light up the landscape. So again, you could anticipate the moon coming out and then just leave your camera on the tripod and use the moon to light the landscape in front of you. That's another example of how you could use the moonlight to light the foreground. All right. Now, here's an example of an image. In fact, I took this image a couple weeks ago out at Buttermilk Trail over the Yuba. And, the image was planned. We planned this image so that the moon would light up the foreground, and then we captured the Milky Way after the moon had set. So this is an example. It looks like daylight, but it actually was taken in the middle of the night, right? And so this was actually taken after midnight, like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. The moon was getting ready to set. We captured the moonlight, left the cameras on the tripod, waited for an hour, and then imaged the night sky. And I actually did this in 2 parts. So the sky was taken, you can see the scenes separated here. I had to pull these together in Photoshop. I had to capture the night sky. Next is actually a stacked image example, but still a composite image. Same tripod spot, and then I captured the foreground. You can see with a slightly different settings for that. So anyhow, that's how you can use the moonlight overlapping your scene to get a composite image, that fits what you're trying to image. All right. So what we're going to do now, let's demo how to use the Stellarium web, and this will also help me explain to you how the Milky Way works. Let me come over here. I need to come over to Stellarium web. There we go. Sorry about that. All right. So this is Stellarium web. You can find it at stellarium-web.org. All right. And when you first open Stellarium web, it asks you if you want to use the GPS setting for your computer to set it up. And so I did that. And here we are. If we go backwards in time to what the Milky Way is going to look like tonight, and if I back up, actually I got to go forward now, and we go forward, and there's the Milky Way right now at this time. And as we watch the night sky enter in, we can see here about 10 o'clock tonight. There's the Milky Way on the edge. And you can see I can spin around. I'm looking directly east here. There's the south. There's the west. There's the north behind me. So here we see the Milky Way. Whoa, whoa. You can look at it in a variety of ways. So anyhow, what we can see here is that there's directly east. All right. And as I click down here in the lower right-hand corner and I run the time forward an hour, that's a few minutes. Let me put this away and put that away. As I run the time forward an hour, there's 11 o'clock. There's 12 o'clock. You can see the Milky Way is beginning to rise. And you can see the Milky Way core is going to be between the east and the south, right? So at this time of year, the Milky Way, and this is the arch season, so the Milky Way is completing an arch in the sky, and so this is what you're going to see on Friday night if you go out there. I've got a scene set up for both of the sites, the Washington Road on Friday night and Lake Wildwood Dam the week later. Both look directly east, so we'll be able to see the Milky Way in the night sky from that. But as the months progress, so if I pop open this, and so this is May 20th. As we go to June, if we look forward a month in June, you can see suddenly the Milky Way is a much higher arch in June, and now by midnight the core is over here directly to the south. All right, and then if we go forward another month into July, it's even taller arch, and now the Milky Way core is progressing to the southwest, I'm sorry. And as we go into August, now it's almost directly vertical. And this is the vertical part of the season with the Milky Way there at the southwest. And you have to actually change your point of view to capture the Milky Way if you want to put something in front of it. And this is why planning is so important, because if you went out expecting to see the Milky Way in the east in August and you had a barn or an arch that you wanted to have in your seat, suddenly Milky Way is going to be, in this other quadrant over here in August. And then it just progresses through the night sky. Here's midnight on 9/20, right? And we get into October, and suddenly it's back over behind us. And in fact, the core now is already below the night sky by midnight. So we'd have to back down and realize that this is how it's progressing, over. I don't know why it's doing that weird thing. Oh, we're already, the sun's coming up, so it's after sunset. So you can sort of see you've got very little time in October to capture the Milky Way core, about an hour before it's below the horizon. So Stellarium's a great tool. I would encourage you to it's free. When we get done here, go log in, check it out, and you'll be able to experience what the night sky gives you some sense of what the night sky looks like, also what planets are going to be up in the night sky. You can also go forward in years, so I can go forward to 2026, 2027. You can see how the planets and the moon and all of that sort of stuff changes. So it's a great tool. It's a virtual planetarium that you can play around with and sort of learn how the night sky moves across the horizon as a basic planning tool. All right, so that's Stellarium Web. Now if I go back to my presentation here, and the next thing that I want to show you is I have to click on my presentation, and I have to go forward on this. As I just described for you, this is the Milky Way season. So from November to February, the core is not visible. The Milky Way is still visible, but the core is not visible above the horizon for the winter months. Actually, it's probably good because it's cold out at the middle of the night. And then from about February to May, we call that the Milky Way arch season. You can get images like I show you below here with the low arch, putting something underneath of it. You can get a decent low arch. And then from June through October is what we call the vertical Milky Way season, and it progresses, as you see in these images below it, from a low arch, low vertical, and it'll progress throughout the evening to become vertical to when late in the season you'll get out and it will be vertical from the moment it's dark. So understanding this will help you to plan your images throughout the calendar year. Now this does have that same sort of cyclical season throughout the year in terms of this basic, what you're able to see. Now we talk about dark skies and light pollution. So here's a couple of images that I've taken in my background. So this image on the left was taken from Kings Beach in Tahoe looking south. And on this evening, you can see I was able to get a beautiful image of the Milky Way. But on the horizon, I've got light pollution on the right-hand side from Tahoe City. and I've got light pollution on the left-hand corner from South Shore. So again, and now that you've seen how the Milky Way progresses, you can probably guess this was taken in August time frame. It's a vertical image, and it's there from the South Shore is south of North Shore, and Tahoe is pretty much to my west, so it's in that southwest region. So again, a little bit of planning, you can get the Milky Way where you want it. Now you have to plan to get the light pollution out of your scene. Another example on the right-hand side is taken from Packer Saddle up near Downeyville, Sierra City, Sardine Lakes area, a beautiful dark night sky area. But again, you get light pollution from Grass Valley. Grass Valley does have a bit of a light bloom from it. So, that can be in your image. You just have to know it's going to be there and how to deal with it. All right. So how do we deal with that? Well, one of the best places to go to learn about the light pollution is a dark sky map. And this is called lightpollutionmap.info. So let's go back to the browser here. Let me bring my browser back up. And let's go over to light pollution map here. And again, we're centered over Sacramento here. And you can see there's a Google map. It's overlaid on top of a Google map. And if we drill in to places like Yuba City, it has quite a bloom, right? So the Beale Air Base has quite a bloom around it. We get over here towards Grass Valley. There's that bloom of Grass Valley in Nevada City, right? But you can see, if you go a little bit outside of Nevada City, which is where we're going to be for Washington, we get away from all of that light, although we, on the horizon, can sometimes see the light of Reno. So depending on where the Milky Way is in relationship to where your point is, you may or may not have some of this light on the horizon. So, again, there's some really dark skies here very close to Grass Valley, Nevada City area. In fact, up here near Emigrant Gap and Blue Canyon, there's an airport up here. And this airport right here, you can see, the Blue Canyon Nyack Airport. There are actually 3 permanent telescopes up here at Blue Canyon Nyack Airport. All of the astronomical societies from Sacramento have their permanent buildings with permanent telescopes up here. This is a great place to get the Milky Way late in the season because, as you can see, you can look to the southeast and you've got no light. This alleyway here gives you some perfect sky to actually go image the Milky Way with nothing on the horizon. Likewise, if we back out here and we look at, let my screen redraw here, we look out here to Nevada. So we got some beautiful dark skies in the Nevada region, some super dark skies here. And so this is a great place to go and look. If you're going to travel, you can put in a scene. You can say, what's it going to look like in Park City, Utah, right? If you're going to go there, and it should center on Park City for me. Where's Park City? Why doesn't that work? Come on. Or enter the I'm not sure why it's not working, but you can go out here and it should show you anywhere in the world what the dark sky or what the light pollution looks like. And you can see it's pretty awful back here. So again, that's a great place to go look at. All right. And so now what I want to talk about is how to predict the weather and do some scene planning. So if we come here, another tool that I like to use for weather planning is called Clear Outside. And that's clearoutside.com. And if we go back to our browser and look at this, the great thing about Clear Outside, this is the forecast for Grass Valley, Nevada City, is it gives you in the top here an instant look at what the skies are going to look like at any hour of the night. It's 24-hour clock. So this is for tonight at Grass Valley. You can see it's mostly clear. Maybe up to around 8 o'clock, and then it clears up again until around midnight. Maybe that's a bad thing for this. And what it tells you is the total clouds in the sky. It tells you low clouds, medium clouds, and high clouds. So it looks like there might be some high clouds predicted to come through around 8 o'clock and around midnight. and that's what's changing the overall level here. It tells you that the ISS will pass over around 10 o'clock tonight, so that is also here. It tells you visibility, tells you precipitation, tells you wind speed, temperature, all those things. And as we look forward to our evening on Friday the 23rd, again, things are looking great. So it's perfectly clear for the 23rd, so that's great. I'll be watching this every night until we get close to that, but it looks like everything's on for the field trip on the 23rd. But again, you can consult your local weather app, but this is a great tool because it sort of tells you whether you're going to see high clouds, low clouds, or what have you. Sometimes low clouds can add drama to the scene. That could be okay. Low clouds, can reflect light from a city below it, but high clouds are the worst because they do, they'll reflect light from any of the light pollution that's below you, and that can wash out the night sky. So you want to try and avoid that. All right, so to wrap things up here, got a couple of slides left to finish this up, and here's what I want to show you. So let's take a look at PhotoPills to help planning. That PhotoPills has an augmented reality feature to it, and this is great for scouting a site. So with this augmented reality, it uses your camera while you have to be on site to do this. But if you're out scouting a potential site and you want to see what the Milky Way is going to look like over that scene at any point in the future or the past, the augmented reality will turn this on for you. And so the image that you see below is the image that I wanted to capture, this tree with the Milky Way arch over it, right? And with this augmented reality turned on, you'll be able to walk around, look through the camera, and figure out where your tripod needs to go. So let's start this demo here. So we'll open PhotoPills, and here you can see a live view you can change the time. That's 2:45 in the morning, and you can sort of take a view, walk around the scene, and try and figure out that orange dot is the core of the Milky Way, shows you where the core is going to be. And so you can sort of walk around until you figure out exactly how you want to center that tree or that arch or that barn, or the river or whatever you're trying to capture, in the Milky Way. So that, again, this is a great tool. I try to do this with all of my trips to plan it with the PhotoPills app and using this AR feature in addition to the other features that I've shown you earlier. And stay tuned, I'm going to be posting some recorded videos about how to use PhotoPills, but there are also hundreds of great videos already online about how to get started with it. So you can download it and go do some of their training to learn how to use this app as well. All right, so that about wraps it up for this evening. I don't know if there's any questions. I've been sort of monitoring the questions, haven't seen any other questions come through. But again, that's the basics of planning. Next, on Wednesday, we will go through how to set up your camera, exposure settings, shutter settings, all of that stuff, and talk about the pros and cons of getting the perfect image. In the meantime, know that these are some of the trips that I have planned this year. We're going to go to the Washington Overlook on Friday. There'll be an example of what you'll be able to capture an image of on Friday night. On the right-hand side, the Lake Wildwood Dam is an interesting because there's lights on the lake with all the houses around the lake. So that's an example of the type of image you'll be able to get on the 30th. And then the infamous Grouse Ridge Lookout has the outhouse with a view. So that's a trip that's planned for later in the year. And by the way, that sunset photo on next to that is one that I captured from the lookout. So again, we'll be there by sunset, so we can get some amazing sunsets plus the night sky. We're planning to go to Rainbow Bridge up on Donner Pass a little bit later on in the year. And then I also have a Nevada County Fair long exposure field trip planned. So again, just to learn how to take long exposures and capture interesting long exposure images like this of the fair ride. So those are some of the things that we have planned. and trips that we'll be executing that will build on your skill set. There are many more that are in the works, still trying to get all the details together before they go up as well on the site. So with that, the next class is planned for Wednesday, May 21st, same time, 6 to 7. If you have any questions, please reach out to me at mike@masterofthemilkyway.com. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel and as well as join the newsletter if you haven't done that already to stay up to speed on what's going on, any last minute changes, any new field trips as they come on, so you're the first to know about it. With that, if there aren't any other questions here, let me check my chat. I don't have any other questions on the chat. So with that, I'll let you go. I will check the questions on the YouTube feed and try to answer them asynchronously. But likewise, you can just reach out to me via email. Happy to answer any questions you have there. With that, I'll sign off until Wednesday night at 6 p.m. Thank you.